Hello my beautiful people, we're here to make a cute crochet stuffed Peppa Pig for those who are big fans of this character. So I'm going to be honest here and tell you, my camera angles are pretty shit. I've only made one of these and it was requested. It was filmed before any of my other crochet projects that I've uploaded on my channel, so please don't roast me in my comments. But I'm using this as a learning opportunity and get more time editing in and making content with something I've worked on. So I'm going to see it through and just finish editing and uploading the video. So this yarn is really soft, but it sheds a lot. We're gonna start off with the head. Let's start with a magic ring, then 8 single crochets around. As requested, I've put up the crochet instructions in larger font so it's more visible in these paused areas. Now, make sure to pull on the end to see which portion to pull first to close and tighten the magic ring circle. Once you've done so, you're going to crochet increase stitch in each stitch. I'm incorporating the extra string from the magic ring to hide it away within the stitches. This step is unnecessary and you can just cut the string shorter or just keep it in for extra filling in the head. I use the extra on every other stitch so it becomes a bit more even and the actual yarn follows for a more seamless feel. Here, we're going to start on a sequence of single crochet. Let's mark that spot so we know where we started, followed by an increase stitch. Follow this sequence around 8 times total and you should end up with 24 stitches total. Now, you're going to do a single crochet in each stitch for the next 7 rows. Now in row 5, we're going to stitch on the back loops to shape the front of the snout. You're basically working single crochets in each stitch, but only on the back loops of each stitch. You'll see the difference once you finish the row. Now, you're going to finish the single crochets for the next 5 rows up, which will grow the tube of the snout. Now, we've made the snout, we're going to start on the rest of the head. You're going to start with 2 single crochets in each stitch, followed by an increase stitch in 3rd stitch. Follow this sequence 8 times total around, which should total to 32 stitches in this row. We're going to continue growing the shape by continuing with 3 single crochets in each stitch, followed by an increase stitch in the 4th stitch. Follow the sequence 8 times total around, which totals the stitch count to 40. Now, you're going to do a single crochet in each stitch for the next 2 rows. This makes up the larger portion for the head. We're going to start decreasing to finish shaping the head. Start off with 3 single crochets in each stitch and decrease stitch in the 4th stitch. Follow this sequence 8 times total around and you should end up with 32 stitches. As we continue to shape the head, we're going to decrease again with 2 single crochets in each stitch, followed by a decrease stitch on the 3rd stitch. Follow this sequence 8 times total around and it should total to 24 stitches this row. We're going to continue closing the head by 1 single crochet followed by a decrease stitch. Follow this sequence 8 times total around and you should end up with 16 stitches. Make sure to stuff the head before continuing, otherwise the hole will be too small and much harder to stuff. Almost there! We're going to decrease in every stitch to make the hole smaller. On another note, but the camera not being able to stay focused is just another issue that I need to make sure to focus on while filming other projects. Last row, you're going to decrease every stitch again, which will close the hole, but for good measure, make sure to leave a tail at the end and sew up any opening. What are my hands doing battling with this head all around the frame? Now slip stitch, cut and tie off while making sure to use the tail to to sew in the ends of any leftover opening. Now, let's get started on making the body and dress portion. Let's start with a magic ring, then 8 single crochets around. Again, make sure to pull on the end to see which portion to pull first to close and tighten the magic ring circle. Once you've done so, you're going to crochet 2 single crochets in each stitch. I'm incorporating the extra string, but this is not necessary. I do this only to incorporate the string and make sure to use it up instead of just wasting it, but that's just my preference. Here, we're going to start on a sequence of single crochet followed by an increase stitch. Follow the sequence 8 times total and you should end up with 24 stitches. I hope these pauses with the larger font instructions are helping. You're going to start off with 2 single crochets in each stitch, followed by an increase stitch and the 3rd stitch. Follow the sequence 8 times total around, which should total to 32 stitches this row. Now, you're going to do a single crochet in each stitch for the next 4 rows. As we continue to shape the body, we're going to decrease again with 2 single crochets in each stitch, followed by a decrease stitch on the 3rd stitch. Follow the sequence 8 times total around, and it should total to 24 stitches this row. Start with a single crochet, followed by a decrease stitch in every stitch to tighten the opening. Do this sequence 8 times total, and you should end up with 16 stitches this row. I lost the footage of decreasing the last part of the opening. We'll start with a single crochet, then decrease stitch, and finish the sequence off with a single crochet. Do this 4 times around total, and you should end up with 12 stitches this row. We'll now be switching yarn from pink to red. This red will be the dress portion. Using the red yarn, single crochet each stitch, totaling 12 stitches. I don't know what my hands are doing getting out of frame here, but ignore that and let's move on. Once you've done so, you'll chain 1, turn, and you'll start crocheting the opposite direction, the same number of stitches. From here, we'll now be shaping the dress for Peppa Pig. Start off with 5 single crochets, followed by an increase stitch. Follow this sequence once more, and it should total 14 stitches this row. Continue this row with 6 single crochets with an increase stitch. Follow the sequence again, and it will total 16 stitches this row. Flaring the dress, we'll do 3 single crochets followed by an increase stitch. Follow the sequence 3 more times around, which will total 20 stitches. Another increase in flare to the dress. We'll do 4 single crochets with an increase stitch. Follow the sequence 4 times total around the row. This brings this row's count to 24 stitches. Continue the flare by doing 5 single crochets followed by an increase stitch. Following this sequence of a total of 4 times around the row, which will give you 28 stitches. Increasing the dress length by doing a 28 single crochet row. Let's do some stuffing to make the shape of the body more prominent. You can do this step after finishing the dress, but I did it before just to make sure that it's looking the way I need it to. Let's continue with 6 single crochets followed by an increase stitch. Follow the sequence for another 3 times. Now, you can see the body taking shape and the dress forming around the body. Increasing the dress length by doing a 32 single crochet row for the next 2 rows. The last flare row for the dress, we'll start with 7 single crochets followed by an increase stitch. Follow this sequence for 4 total around, and it should complete 36 stitches. It's the final last length for the dress. We'll continue off by doing 36 single crochets for the next 3 rows and finish. Slip stitch and cut the tail short. Sew into the dress so it doesn't dangle. Let's start the eyes. Starting off with a magic ring, then 6 single crochets around. Make sure to pull on the end to see which portion to pull first to close and tighten the magic ring circle. Increase stitch around to each stitch, which will total 12 stitches. Yep, there it is. My hands deciding that being centered wasn't the priority and disappear off the frame. Luckily, these steps are pretty repetitive from the other parts, so it shouldn't deviate too much, and just uses white yarn. Slip stitch and cut the tail long for sewing later. Make sure to make 2 total so you can use for both eyes. Going on to the pupil, let's start off with a magic ring, then 6 single crochets around. Make sure to pull on the end to see which portion to pull first to close and tighten the magic ring circle. Slip stitch and cut the tail long for sewing later. Make sure to make 2 total so you can use it for both eyes again. Continuing with the cheeks or the blush. Let's start off with a magic ring, then 6 single crochets around. You should be an expert at this by now. Make sure to pull on the end to see which portion to pull first to close and tighten the magic circle ring. Once you've done so, you're going to increase stitch in each stitch. Why do my fingers look so confused on what to do? Didn't I just give you the instructions? I'm shaking my head on my silly hands. Let's finish off the blush round with a sequence of single crochet followed by an increase stitch 6 times around. This will total 18 stitches this round. So it is 1 row bigger than the eyes and 2 rows bigger than the pupils. Slip stitch and cut the tail long for sewing later. Make sure to make 2 total so you can use for both sides of the face. Let's continue with the nostrils. Make a magic ring, then 6 single crochets around. Pull and tighten the magic ring circle. Slip stitch and cut the tail long for sewing later. Make sure to make 2 total so you can use for both nostrils. Now onto the ears. Let's start off with a magic ring, then 4 single crochets around. Again, make sure to pull on the end to see which portion to pull first to close and tighten the magic ring circle. Now go around and do an increase stitch in each stitch. This will total 8 stitches this row. It's pretty simple once you get the hang of it. since the start of each part is pretty similar. Continue by doing 8 single crochets for the next 4 rows to finish up the ears. This will create a tube-like structure for the ears. Slip stitch and cut the tail for sewing later. Don't forget to stuff the ears to make sure they stand up straight. Make sure to make 2 total so you can use for both sides. We are now on to the last leg of our journey. Sorry, stupid pun. Let's start with 5 chain stitches. Then slip stitch into the first stitch to create a complete circle. I kept the little clips to see where each stitch was so I didn't get lost. You'll continue the chain up by doing 5 single crochets for the next 7 rows. This will create a tube-like structure which we will be using for the legs. I tried crocheting this part without the markers, but it became really hard to find each stitch. So for my sanity, this is why there's so many markers. Once finished, please slip stitch, cut, and leave a long tail for sewing onto the shoes or boots. Let's start with a magic ring, then 6 single crochets around. Again, make sure to pull on the end to see which portion to pull first and close and tighten the magic circle. Putting an increased stitch to each stitch, this will total 12 stitches in this row. You'll continue to create the shoes by putting in 12 single crochets for each row for the next 4 rows. Let's continue with 2 single crochets and a decreased stitch. Follow the sequence for 2 more times within the row. This will bring the stitch count to 9. Shaping the rest of the shoe, we'll do a single crochet followed by a decreased stitch. Again, follow the sequence 3 times total around this row, which will bring it to 6 stitches. Let's finish off the shoe by doing 6 single crochets for the next 2 rows. Don't forget to make 2 shoes for both legs. Once you've done so, please slip stitch, cut, and leave a long tail for sewing. Now onto the arms. Let's start off with a magic ring, then 4 single crochets around. Again, make sure to pull on the end to see which portion to pull first, to close and tighten the magic ring circle. Once you've done so, you'll be doing an increased stitch all around the row. This will bring the total stitch count to 8 this row. Now let's create a long tube to form the rest of the arm. We're going to do 8 single crochets in each row for the next 10 rows up. Again, we'll need 2 of these for both arms. Finish off, then slip stitch, cut, and leave a long tail for sewing. Onto the fingers. This will be the same exact pattern as the arms, but with less length. Now, let's start off with a magic ring, then 4 single crochets around. Close the magic ring circle. Continue the next row with an increased stitch around the row. Let's create a long tube to form the rest of the finger. We're going to do 8 single crochets in each row for the next 2 rows up. Finish off, then slip stitch, cut, and leave a long tail for sewing. Now, for the assembly. I made sure to use the clips to hold pieces of the body together, like for example how I'm clipping the head in place to the body. This helps to keep the head in place while I'm working with it to sew it onto the body. There's no real technique here, just sewing it in place. If there's a name for it, I apologize. I don't know the terminology for this sewing technique. Now onto the lower half of the body, we're going to attach the shoes to the legs, then the legs to the body. Same thing here. No real technique, just sewing them together. For some reason, I'm missing footage of any more sewing, so you'll have to see the final result for where to place the pieces to complete this adorable Peppa Pig. Thanks for watching, and I'll be sure to be better and do better in the coming future content. Bye!